Lotus here. I thought with all the craziness going on in the world that it would be really nice if we all just kind of had a paint party together at home individually. So I decided that I was going to take my skills that I learned at Painting with a Twist, I worked there for a little over a year, and apply them to a little at-home painting lesson for you guys. So if you'd like, you can always pause the video if you need some extra time to catch up on a step, but I'm going to try to take you step by step through a cherry blossom painting. So if y'all are not familiar with cherry blossom trees, they are one of my favorite trees. They are just beautiful flowering trees, really popular in Japan, and I think in New York as well. They've got some there. So really beautiful pink trees. It's going to be a painting at night. So I'm going to, it is nighttime outside, but it's actually going to be night in the painting. So the reason I chose this specific subject and time of day is because it incorporates a lot of fun elements for beginners to just really kind of boost your confidence by teaching you some fun tricks that will really kind of help to make the process a little more seamless, a little streamlined, if you will. So that's the idea. I'm going to go ahead and show you what you will need. I've got several different paints here. I did not pour them yet, so I'm going to show you ones that I'm using. You don't have to use the same ones. You can use whichever ones you like, and I'm going to take a quick break real quick so I can show you real fast. Okay, great. I'm back. Sorry, I had to take care of my cat real quick. She's trying to slowly drive me insane. So anyway, it's okay. So basically, what you're going to need, and what I know you already have at home most likely, is a cup, and preferably one that you don't mind getting paint on. So for me, I'm using this plastic, disposable cup, and you don't want to fill the water up entirely. You don't want to fill the cup up with water entirely, rather, because it can spill, and you only need a little bit of water to get you throughout the entire painting. So what you will also be needing is a paper towel. So I use these paper towels. They're Viva and they're super absorbent and I love them. They're more expensive, but whatever. You don't need expensive paper towels, but you are going to be using your paper towel a lot. So having a more absorbent one is always really nice. I'm using acrylic paints for now, so you don't want to get them on cloth. If you were using like watercolor, maybe you could use a throwaway towel or something, because it's okay if that gets like stained. But acrylic not only stains cloth and fabric, but it also gets into the fabric. It kind of dries and gets all hardened and stuff. So that's also why I'm wearing this apron. So, and it's kind of cute. I decided to get one with a little frilly skirt. So anyway, that's just me though. That's completely optional. You don't have to get one with a frilly skirt. So anyway, let's dive back into the paints, because I kind of got sidetracked. I forgot to kind of go over the materials you'd need first. So do paints and then brushes, and then the easel and the canvas I will go into next. So for the white, I really like this white here. It is from dickblick.com. That is not going to get me demonetized, I hope, because it is a very strange website name. But anyway, they just go by Blick these days, and this is Blick Acrylic is their acrylic line of paints, and their white is especially nice. It's very thick, very pigmented. We use this all the time at Painting with a Twist back when I worked there, and I just loved it. It was so nice. You could gesso a canvas, which gessoing, if you're not familiar, is just literally just covering the canvas, usually with gesso traditionally, but you can paint over an old painting with just using white paint or with gesso, which is a different material. Anyway, lots of jargon I'm throwing at you, but you don't really have to know all of that. So don't worry about all that. Not yet anyway. This is just lesson 1, right? So anyway, getting into the paints, we've got our white. You're also going to need, I haven't decided if we're doing a moon yet, so I have some deep yellow here. You don't actually have to use deep yellow if you don't want to do a moon in your painting. I might do a moon in my painting, so just in case, or maybe some fireflies or something. So I haven't decided. So I've got some deep yellow here just in case. I've got a little extra tube there as well. I have some green. I do have some like dark forest green. This one says Christmas green. This is the Master's Touch, by the way, for that brand. These are different brands, but you can just use acrylic the whole time. It's completely fine. I wish that I had all of those in acrylic, but I don't. So this one's Apple Barrel. This is a lot more runny, and I'm not a huge fan, but it's fine because I'm actually probably going to be mixing it with either black or blue to make it darker when I use it. I'm gonna just see how it goes on the canvas once we've got our background down, and then decide from there if I want to mix it, and I'll let you guys know what I decide to do, and you can decide if something looks better with the paints that you're using, go with that, and I will kind of give you that step along the way. You know, I'll kind of give you those tips as we're going along. So in addition to the dark green, we also have a dark blue. This has a bunch of acrylic paint on it. As you can see, I've used this guy a lot. I really like blue, and I've painted a lot of things that are not paintings with acrylic paint as well, because it's very good for crafting since it dries and it hardens and doesn't just stain things, it actually hardens. So I think it hardens into kind of almost like a plastic. So anyway, this one is from Daler Rowney. It's just a random Simply acrylic. I might have gotten this at Walmart. I don't know if that's their art brand, but that's where I got it. I'm fairly certain. So this one is Master's Touch. Again, just like the deep yellow, this is black, and it is called Permanent Black. I really, again, prefer the Blick.com version of pretty much all these colors. Like, those were just, as far as cheap acrylic paints go, those are like top of the line to me. The last color we're going to be using is magenta. This also, I'm using Master's Touch for this. I just got this today. I don't actually know how it paints, but I've used Master's Touch before, so I'm assuming it's going to be kind of run-of-the-mill. The magenta itself, though, is so red, it almost just looks red to me. So I'm just like, I just grabbed it because I'm used to magenta kind of playing tricks with my eyes like that. So hopefully when we mix it with a little white, it will give us that nice different pink that we're looking for. I decided to go with magenta though, and not just pink, because I want different shades of pink. I want a lot more dimension in my tree. If it's just one color, it tends to look very flat, especially with the method that I'm gonna have us use today. So anyway, those are our paints. Now we gotta go, oh yeah, I also have glitter here. I don't know if I'm gonna use it, but I've got it. So this is gonna be, it's extra fine glitter, and I got it at Hobby Lobby. So they've got like an amazing glitter selection there. Just FYI, not sponsored. And so for our brushes, I have, again, this is Master's Touch. I swear I'm not sponsored by them either. This is a teeny tiny little eyelash brush, but you don't need one like this. This is really fancy. It's just very, very tiny. See that? Oh my gosh, it's so tiny. Anyway, this is an 18/0. That, I have no idea what that actually means. But anyway, it is teensy tiny. I like having at least one tiny detail brush because I really enjoy adding details to my paintings. And you just never know when you're going to want to do that. And it kind of gives you a little more creative liberty if you can add that in. So that's always nice. I've also got a number 2 round. This guy's got a little straggler, but whatever. A number 2 round. This one is going to be for our limbs of our tree. I also, speaking of the tree, we are going to want to use some chalk, because as much as I would like to say it's easy to freehand tree branches, it's not, especially if you're a beginner. So chalk is going to be your best friend for this. When the canvas dries after you've painted the background, it is possible to chalk something on and then erase it. So it's a really good tool for beginners to use if you're trying to learn how to make tree branches go in the natural direction that they go. So it's difficult to learn for some people, and so don't feel discouraged if you feel like, oh, I'm not getting it. That's why we're using chalk, because you can just erase as much as you need to, and it's totally fine. I'm not gonna judge you. What am I gonna do? So Anyway, I also have a 1-inch wash. This is my mermaid brush. I really like it. So it's got mermaid scales on it. I got this also from Hobby Lobby. You can tell where I spend most of my time and too much of my money. So this is actually technically a 3/4 of an inch. Whatever, it's close enough, right? 75% of an inch is still an inch to me, whatever. So as long as it covers enough ground on your canvas, you're going to be using this a lot for your background. If you have a 1-inch wash though, that does cover just a tiny bit more ground. So it doesn't have to be angled like this. It can be a square, totally fine, does not matter. It's just as long as you can use it comfortably, that's what matters. What all of these brushes that I'm using are suggestions. Anything that makes you feel more comfortable and more confident painting, that's the brush you want to go with. If you come up with a totally different way to paint this, do it! Paint it that way. I would love to hear the different kinds of ways that you've painted this in the comments down below. If you try it a different way, if you try a different method, if you use a toothbrush at some point on this painting, you can do that. And there's a part of this painting that you can use just about any kind of hard bristle brush. My hard bristle brush though is going to be this little guy. I'm using this specifically just for splatter paint. We are going to be splattering stars on this painting at some point. It's going to be very exciting. So anyway, this is going to be the final brush. Oh, I should probably give you the size. I'm sorry. If you wanted to use the kind that I'm using, this actually is an inch. Let's see if there's much of a difference. Look at that. It's almost exactly. Whoa. It is 3/4. That's crazy. Okay, so this is actually an inch wash, but technically it's because of the type of bristle, like this is much more of a gesso brush, so this is kind of more what artists, like what I would use to gesso over a painting that I've finished with. And I would prefer one that's thicker, but some artists don't care and they'll just use like a 1-inch. But this type of bristle is good for two things, in my opinion, and it is gessoing and splatter paint. You can use it for other things, but it's a little bit too wide for other things, you know, for actually using to paint with. So unless you're using a larger canvas. Speaking of the canvas, oh wait, was that all the brushes? No. One more brush. Okay, so this brush I just broke out in case I wanted to do the stippling with something more like this. It is a little bit roughed up. As you can see, the bristles, there's the camera. If you can see, the bristles there are just, come on, focus, focus. Okay, this is, there we go. That's as good as it's gonna get. Okay, so the bristles there are really roughed up, and that's actually what you want for the stippling. Stippling is when you use a brush to go like this. You're just dabbing paint on by kind of stabbing it onto the canvas. It's called stippling. I think it was, I know there was an artist, I learned this in art history just last semester, who invented stippling, but it is a method that many artists have used throughout the years in order to kind of just quickly add, you know, bunches of dots, essentially, like a collection of dots. So it's really nice, especially with doing trees, which is what we're going to be using it for. So, spoiler alert! Anyway. So that's all of our brushes, and getting into the canvas now. So the canvas is going to be just a plain white 16 by 20. That is the standard size of canvas. Most canvases that you're going to see are going to be 16 by 20s. Most canvases that artists use are going to be 16 by 20s, except for Bob Ross, because he loved them huge. He just really liked his huge canvases. The easel that I'm using, nothing special, pretty cheap. If you can see, if you bought this kind of easel, I'm going to just show you real quick how I put it together. So it kind of comes apart like that. And so I guess it's, oh, I probably should have done this. There we go. So that you can kind of fold it up and take it with you other places. I never fold it up, so I just set it up and get going. So there we go. Then the little leg sticks out like that. And you're going to want a paper plate as well to put your paints on. You don't need anything fancy. You don't actually need, what is it? Hold on. What am I thinking of? A palette. You don't actually need an artist's palette. It's been so long since I've used one, I forgot the word. So basically, get cat hair on everything. So basically what you're going to want to start with is just pouring your paints. I know this has taken quite a while for me to just explain everything, but you know what? It's a process. What I learned working at Painting with a Twist, it's really helpful to give yourself a good amount of white and to put it in the center of your palette. So if you have a palette, by the way, awesome. You're going to need a lot of black. I'm running out. Ugh, there we go. You're going to need a lot of black because we are going to be painting a night scene. And blue, it's always good to kind of go with the color wheel, which means dark to light and cool to warm colors, basically. If that's too confusing, forget about it. It's just easier to mix them because you kind of want them close together, and usually you're going to mix those colors together. So for this one, however, we just want our blue and our red to kind of be next to each other. And I will show you guys in a second. Oh, I just bought this, so just a sec. There we go. I have to do that with the yellow in a second. There we go. Gonna want lots of that red there. You want your paints also kind of close by because, to be honest, oh, I just said I would need to do this. Because to be honest, you are going to probably need more paint, especially as a beginner. It's a skill on its own to learn how to use your paint sparingly. So I'm gonna, somehow I ended up scooching. Okay, so there's our last one right there. And again, I don't even know if I'm gonna use the yellow. I might have just wasted some paint. It's fine, not the end of the world. So I'm gonna keep my water over here because I'm right-handed. So, and if I turn away from you guys, I'm sorry. I tried to angle it so that I could also be facing you guys, but you could still see the canvas pretty well. Get all these out of the way, and you can see the canvas really well. There we go. Okay. So the first step is always going to be the background. So now we're going to take our 1-inch wash, or rather 3 1/4 inch wash, and its mermaidy goodness. And we're going to dip it in the water just a little bit, just to make sure the bristles are working and it mixes with the paint well enough. And we're going to start, we're actually going to start, I'd rather do purple. So that's going to actually be 3 colors. You think it's just going to be blue and the magenta. Ho, ho, ho. Not so. It's also going to be the white. So you want it to be, you want to get yourself a nice kind of warm purpley color. If you already have purple paint nearby, that's just fine. I thought that it would be kind of nice to actually learn how to mix some colors as well. So I am starting us that way. So I'm going to stand up because I'm used to painting and standing, or slightly stand up so you guys can kind of see me. But I'm going to start right up here, a bunch of purple. I dipped my brush in the water before going back in here. I didn't even dry it on the paper towel. You can if you want to. But if you notice, I'm not using a whole ton of paint as I'm going along here. And you will inevitably have to keep remixing this color, and that's fine. The problem is getting it exactly the same, so don't stress about that. Whoop. Listen here, you. Okay. Okay, and if you noticed, a common mistake for beginners, here I'm actually gonna like pick the light up in a second when I stand back up so that you guys can watch me paint, since I'm probably gonna be standing for the remainder of this. I just don't do well sitting and painting, at least not at this angle. So anyway, what you'll notice is, here I'm gonna just go ahead and do it now. Okay, so what you'll notice is I am, with my brush strokes, I'm going all the way across the canvas because the more you stop, you're gonna make marks, if you notice that. It's hard to see it, really, but it leaves marks if you, if you stop mid brushstroke, it usually leaves like a white mark because you can see the canvas poking through. It kind of digs into your paint a little bit, and then you can see the canvas kind of poking in there, poking out. So you don't want to do that. You want to go all the way across for that nice smooth brush stroke so that you get a nice, beautiful skyline. We are painting our sky right now. The proportions, if you're mixing purple, by the way, it's primarily going to be, okay, just a little tiny bit of blue to get this purple. It's going to be a little tiny bit of blue, at least with the kind of blue that I'm using, the amount of pigment that it has in it. Just a little bit of blue, a little touch of white, and red. And you want to really make sure that your brush, while you're mixing it, you get a nice solid color before, and no streaks before you end up back on your canvas. Unless you want it to be streaky, because that's totally fine too. You can streak different colors in there. But I'm trying to keep it primarily the same color. And if you want, you are going to want to probably paint the edges. Most people are very OCD about that, actually. I noticed working at PWAT. I'm going to refer to painting with a twist as PWAT from now on because it's just easier for me. So when I worked at PWAT, I noticed a lot of people who get into painting for the first time, they tend to first be very hard on themselves. Second, be very OCD. So they want the canvas covered. When you hang this up on your wall, like, I'm not going to bother with what's under there for it now. I don't really care, especially not about the top. But especially the bottom of your canvas, you're going to want painted because you're usually going to have it kind of higher up on the wall where guests can see the underneath. So if you are going to hang up your painting, which I would hope that you do want to hang it up by the time we're done with it, then you're going to at least want the bottom to be painted. Thankfully, we're doing kind of mostly black on the bottom, black and green, so it shouldn't be too difficult to just paint it like real quick. You don't have to do any detail down there. So, go back into it. My water looks like Kool-Aid. Don't drink it, by the way. It's not going to taste very good. What we often did at PWAT is we would joke because, you know, you're allowed to drink there. And so oftentimes when people got a little bit too drunk, they would end up accidentally trying to drink the paint water. That did actually happen. Craziness. I do have some fun stories myself from when I worked there, and I might divulge in a bit. Or maybe next time. I've got a lot of instructing to do for this one since it's our first time painting together. Okay, keep on painting, keep on trucking. Some canvases also have some imperfections in them, like little bumps and stuff, because if you're buying a canvas for the first time, you want it to be, you don't want to go super fancy your first time, because then what if you don't like it? You know, you don't want to have to gesso over a nice canvas and make it lumpier, right? So you're probably going to get a canvas with some imperfections, and that's totally fine. They're not going to show up in the final painting. Most likely. I can't promise anything, because then you guys can sue. Right? Anyway. Just kidding. I might not edit any of this. If I don't, you guys already knew I was kind of kooky, right? So you're just going to see more of that. Anyway, going right back into it. I am remixing my colors a little bit here and there. And by the way, if you're kind of impatient, you want to go ahead of me, feel free, okay? So that just means you're going to go to, I'm going to pick up the canvas, or actually, I'm just going to move this guy back a little more. You might see my hallway, but there we go. Okay, that way you can see me and the canvas. Huzzah! Okay, so if you're a little bit more impatient, we're gonna go to about 3/4 of the way down, because the rule of thirds, this is more boring art jargon, but if you're interested, the rule of thirds is the rule that our eyes just tend to divide things up into thirds and tend to see them more appealing if they're divided up into thirds and fourths. So you can go 2/3 of the way down, but we're going 3/4 of the way down, which is close to 2/3, and so our eyes are like, that looks more appealing, you know? I think it has something to do with, there's like a certain number in nature, I forgot the name of it, but it's like, it appears throughout nature. It's really interesting stuff, yeah. Art and science go hand in hand, by the way, they really do, because, you know, science is creation, right? So creation imitates the creator, and there we have it. Science and art are one. Wow, so deep here in our painting tutorial. Okay, so I'm gonna keep on trucking. If you need a really an easier way to kind of get your color back on there, a lot of times, but it'll make it lighter, but you can take just a tiny bit of white, because your paintbrush is gonna dry out. That's why you have to keep getting more of a color, right? So your paintbrush is gonna dry out, so eventually you do have to dip back down into there. And that's when oftentimes you'll see me mixing the color up again. But an easy way to get more of that color without having to mix it up again is just to drag some white, like you see right here in my palette. I'm just dragging some white into it, mixing it there. And then it's just gonna give me a lighter version of that same color. And I can add a little tiny water too. Tiny bit of water. And look at that. It's a nice scraping sound. Sounds like I'm sawing logs over here. Okay. Mixing it up, mixing it up. Oh, I want more white for this one actually. Yeah. Ooh. And now, I'm mostly just using red and white, but I haven't washed the blue off of my brush. So it's kind of like just a very light magenta, or like almost a fuchsia, I guess, color down here at the bottom. So it sort of looks like a sunset, and I like it, so that's what we're doing, I guess. Anyway, I'm going further down because I like to be extra cautious. You don't have to go this far down, just FYI. And, you know, you can just, right where I said earlier where we were gonna stop, you don't have to go all the way down to where I did. I like to give myself some extra breathing room, and in that case, you wanna bring your background usually further down than you need it, not necessarily this far down, right? So, okay, I'm washing my brush. By the way, the best way to wash your brush is to just kind of pretend that you're painting the bottom of your cup. You're gonna just kind of paint the bottom right there, swish back and forth, really press it down, tap it off, and then just dab it on your napkin. And there you go. So I am going to just make sure that my edges are painted. So I'm going to go over some places that I missed with my edges, which means I'm going to mix up this color just a little bit more. And yes, I did an ombre, kind of, which I did not intend to do. So don't hate me if I didn't actually go into that preparation for you, that we were doing an ombre. I didn't expect to do an ombre. It started happening and I just really liked it, so I went with it. But you don't have to do an ombre, but you can if you want to. And again, the way that I got the ombre was I just didn't wash my brush. I didn't wash the blue off my brush. I just kept adding a little bit more white. And I started using red when I was mixing the color more than the blue. And I stopped using the blue to mix it eventually all together. But I just used the blue that was already on my brush to kind of keep that fuchsia in there, right? So it's more of a cool red, right? So anyway, here we go. I'm gonna paint the edges now. And again, I'm not gonna worry too much about the ombre transferring onto the sides. I know you can't see me do that side, but I'll do the other one. I promise you'll be able to see that. There we go. All the way down. Okay, and if you noticed, I used mostly the same purple pretty much all the way down the sides because I don't care to mix that up again. You can if you want. It looks really neat if you have an ombre in and it goes all the way around. But you do not have to. And if you don't have to and it's going to stress you out, don't do it. This isn't for stress. This is for fun. If you hear snoring in a minute, it's because my dog is asleep and he's such a cute, he's like such a loud snorer. It's so adorable. Anyway. So, I'm just getting the spots that I missed. So if you want to do that, you can. Oops, like that. Anything that kind of is just going to bother you later, go ahead and fix it now. You do not want it to drive you insane. It can. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we could go ahead right now and paint our mountains, which yes, I'm going to add some mountains in there. I just want to add some mountains. That's another thing that I could teach you guys to do really fast, really easy. But instead of doing that now, I'm actually going to have us wait just about 5 to 10 minutes, somewhere around there, come back and check if our canvas is still wet. You can also use a blow dryer right here. Feel free to pause the video and blow dry it off, and then jump back in, because I'm going to probably do a jump cut to where it's dry. so we can dive right back in once you guys see me again. So we're gonna wait for it to dry. By the way, the best way to tell if your canvas is dry is if it is still shiny, it's gonna be wet. If it is more matte, which is the opposite of shiny, then it is going to be more dry. So if there's any shiny spots, it's probably still wet. So unless you really laid it on thick, that's the only way that it could still be, it could be dry and shiny. Anyway, I'll be back. Okay. All right. I don't know about you guys, but my canvas is just about finished drying. So it's okay if it's a little tiny bit wet for this next part, because we're going to do something super fun. And we are actually going to get a separate plate for this. I just realized I'm going to need a separate plate. So what we're going to do is we're going to make our stars. So this is super fun. I love this so much. I am going to take, I'm going to show you how to do this. You're going to actually want to mix up a little bit of white. You don't need that much, just a tiny little bit. This is more than a tiny bit, but whatever. And a little bit of water. You can even just, that's fine. Okay, and it's okay if there's already some color in it from mashing it together. It's okay if there's already a little bit of color in it, but I am going to use this brush. It's the stiff bristle brush. This is actually the brush that I said, I wasn't joking when I said you could use a toothbrush on part of this painting, and that would be freaking awesome, because that is something that you could actually use. So I'm mashing it, and I'm also going to dab it on my paper towel, and I'm going to show you real quick. Splatter. Just takes a little flicking. I like lots and lots of stars. So the way that I'm going to show you how to do this without ruining my camera, because it is my phone, but I'm splattering in at nothing basically. But you're going to want to take the brush in your not dominant hand, guide it along the canvas, and then pull back on the back bristles, and it jettisons forward the paint, right? So I don't know how well you can see it from there, but I have a sky full of stars right now. Yeah. I'm a little bit star obsessed. So there we go. Gonna want to get that brush nice and rinsed off now. I'm washing it off in our water cup, and we're gonna set it aside for now. But I am gonna go ahead and show you guys the effects because I don't think it's easy to see, but here are the stars that I made using this method. So you don't have to, and there's my little spot where I said I didn't care. I will care eventually, I'm sure. But yeah, you don't have to do stars, and you don't have to use that method. Like I said, if there's another method that you prefer to use stars or to paint this painting in any other way, absolutely feel free to do so. So yes. Anyway, that's our last step for here. I'm gonna go ahead and I might stop this video unless it already started recording a new one. Anyway, it's fine. My camera's weird. Okay. It is also my phone, so my phone is weird. Okay, so basically what you're gonna wanna use next, we're going to make our mountains. Because remember, what we want to do is we want to go from the background to the foreground. So the first steps are always going to be what's in the background, and you're going to want to go what's in the farthest background, what's in front of that, then what's in front of that, and then what's in front of that. It's always going to go in those layers. You want to layer your steps because otherwise you're just going to give yourself a lot more work, just I promise you, unfortunately. And again, I could always be wrong. If there's a way that you like to do things that is so not the norm, awesome, you know, that's great. But just from the way that I've learned how to paint, I have learned my lesson, unfortunately, that for me personally, that does not work. So for our mountains, we're going to take the easy peasy route here, and we're just going to take our 1-inch wash. That is not the stiff bristle one. I realized I think I called the other one that was technically a gesso brush. I'm so sorry. This is our 1-inch wash, okay, even though it's 3/4 of an inch. And we're gonna take some black, and we're actually going to, it helps that this one's angled for this, but again, you don't need it to be angled. You can use a square for this, okay? So what I'm gonna do is just go like this. Get some more black loaded up on there. And you just kind of wiggle your brush. You can do some sharp mountains. You can do some hills if you want, but you do want them to kind of end down here. And that's why, again, I put my background a lot lower than I needed it, just in case. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my mountains yet. Go ahead and fill this up. I used a little bit of water just now to go ahead and wet my brush. I'm gonna do that again. If you noticed, I just went straight from the water to the canvas just then because there was already, I knew there was enough paint on my brush. It's just that this black dries out really quickly and easily. I don't know why. I'm not really sure why. I suppose there's a chemical reason. Anyway, science, again, chemistry, chemicals, science words. Okay. And I might forget, but because this is on video, at least you will not forget because you can rewind it, hopefully. Hopefully you won't forget, hopefully I won't forget. But this is a good time to just go ahead and put it out there that we are going to paint the bottom of the canvas, because remember, that is important. That is the most important edge to paint, arguably, is the bottom, because wherever you're going to put it, whatever angle you put it on the wall or whatever, or not whatever angle you view it from the wall, you're probably going to be below the painting, so at least to some degree. So I guess unless you put it where you can look straight at it, the edges won't really matter too much. But anyway, again, not everybody cares about the edges, but I've noticed a lot of people do. So I'm gonna go ahead, and I'm pretty happy with my mountains here. So a little extra paint. Making sure that you guys can kind of see this. I know it might be a little bit far away. Hopefully when you full screen this, it's fine. Even on your phone, wherever you're watching this from. But I like to start at the top. I'm going to describe this a little better. I'm out of practice describing what I'm doing. So I like to start kind of at the top of the painting. I went ahead and made one side and the tippy top of the painting right there with just that one brush stroke. And then I kind of slide it down and just sort of wiggle it on the way down. And you're going to make some nice little bumps in your mountain that way. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to try and make them kind of even distance, because I kind of want the mountains to go down pointing at where the tree is going to be. So you want to go up and then wiggle your way down. There we go. Get a little more water in there. This paint is so weird. It's just the black paint that's very strange with the Master's Touch for some reason. I don't know why. Again, I'm so used to Blick though with that. Anyway, so here we go. Okay, I'm gonna make this side a little more pointed. All right, that way it kind of mirrors that side a little better. Okay, and it's fine if the middle isn't perfect because we're gonna cover it with a big old tree. So I am going to finish kind of just detailing this guy out though. It's a little bit too perfect. You know, in nature actually is not symmetrical, not perfectly symmetrical. So your eye will catch, if you try to make something naturey, you know, if you're trying to paint like a mountain, a tree even, nature is not perfectly symmetrical most of the time. So oftentimes when we try to paint something and it looks totally symmetrical, our eyes will tell us there's something off about it. There's something eerie about it. It's almost like an uncanny valley effect. At least for me, I've noticed it a lot, and I've had that confirmed in other people as well. So, gonna wash off our brush. It's incredibly important this time that you wash off your brush because we just used the hardest color to get out of another color. If you ended up accidentally mixing this into something black specifically into another color, it's going to ruin that color. So you really, really want to make sure you get that black all the way out of your brush. So I keep going back over until you'll notice now when I paint my napkin here, there's no dark, like as a minute ago it was really dark. That's where I knew there was still some pigment in there. Now that's just the water, so we're good to go. So now the brush is pretty much cleaned. We're good to go. I am gonna, again, kind of let my mountains dry for a little bit. Yes, so I'm gonna let my mountains dry for a little bit. And then we might actually end up making a little pond down there in the middle. I don't know, I haven't decided yet. That's part of the fun, but again, I know like if you're really nervous, that can be like, oh my God, you haven't decided, like what are we doing? But it's actually kind of really fun to just do something on the fly. And if you see that anything that I'm doing on this painting is something you don't really want on your painting, you're just like, that would clash with my living room or whatever the heck, you know, then feel free to skip it. You know, I think that you're gonna love the end result no matter what you decide to do with it. I really do think that you're gonna love the end result. And hopefully you'll feel a little bit more confident in your artistic ability. So I'm gonna let my paint just dry for another, say 5 or 10 minutes tops. Or again, you can use a blow dryer, or you can, you know, use another paper plate or paper or something, fan, just kind of wave in front of it and just sort of dry it the old-fashioned way, that's completely fine too. But either way, I am going to be right back. All right, good enough. Okay, so basically, where's my chalk? There we go. The next thing that we're gonna wanna do once your mountains are dry, oh, and by the way, I did, for any eagle-eyed viewers, I did kind of fix some of my peaks here that were just bothering me. I wanted to make them a little tiny bit more symmetrical just because I'm using them to frame the tree. So yes, nature's asymmetrical, but I did want them to at least be kind of level and mostly filling up the same amount of space on either side, because again, the rule of thirds, you want those 2/3 on either side of the tree to be relatively inconspicuous, because otherwise it's going to distract the eye. So anyway, now that that's out of the way, I just have plain white chalk. This box of chalk cost me $1.69 at Hobby Lobby, and even that, I'm sure you can get it for $1.50 somewhere else, you know, but I was just already there. So anyway, so here's your chalk. What you're gonna do is you're going to start drawing your tree. And I know some of you are like, drawing? What the heck? No. I didn't sign up to draw. Well, you didn't sign up at all, really. I mean, let's be real. So honestly, there is always going to be a little bit of drawing in every painting. You're going to want to bring that in, but that does not mean that you already have to know how to draw. Aha! What does she mean? I mean, basically, all you have to do is stay relatively straight. And again, it's actually okay if you're not going to keep your chalk lines straight at all, because this is a tree. It's nature. It can be asymmetrical. It can be wobbly. It can be gnarled, you know, whatever, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and draw the branches out, though. I do want something to remember when you're drawing your branches is that they're always going to be thickest at the base. So I'm actually going to bring my tree base up a little bit because I might want to put something down here. I'm just going to leave some room for that. I definitely want to put some grass down here at the very least. So I'm actually going to start my tree roots right about there, and like I hopefully you can see in the camera, it's kind of going curved. It's not going to be like super straight. Usually trees kind of curve into their trunk from the roots. And they do the same thing with their branches. Most trees do not make an L shape with their branches. They make more of a curved shape. So more like a Y, rather than a V or an L. So here we go. I'm gonna go ahead and make my branches kind of come out like this. And the way that I usually decide where to put a fork in my branches is I'll kind of do a wavy line, and then where there's a bump in the line, I'll kind of bring a branch out. We're really branching out today. Anyway, all right, that's enough of that. So I'm gonna keep on bringing the branches out, and worst comes to worst, you can cover them with flowers. Okay, worst comes to worst, if you really, really hate the way that your branches turn out, even after we put paint on them, that's fine. You can cover them with pink petals. That is what we're going to do for our last step of the cherry blossom tree, is we're going to cover them with pink petals. So that one's a little bit bare. Okay, so that's it for me for my tree. I'm not going to do much more. There we go. I'm not going to do much more than that because I really don't want to give myself more work. Just remember, every time you make a branch, you are going to have to paint that branch. So, and if you're concerned, again, if you get anything wrong, feel free to pause the video. feel free to pause the video, even like, you know, if you have to get angry, that's okay. You know, a lot of people get frustrated when they're doing something new for the first time, and that is okay. Give yourself that grace. You're trying something new, and that's amazing, and I'm super proud of you. I'm serious. Like, no matter who you are, how long you've been painting, if you're painting with me, I'm really proud of you. So thank you so much for joining me in this, by the way. I know I'm saying that really early, but I am really appreciative. This is about the time in the painting when a lot of people get frustrated with themselves, and that's okay. So again, that's why we're using chalk. If you want, as long as your canvas down here is completely dry, and you can wait until it is, I would recommend that. You can use your paper towel, okay? Wet it in your water cup. You don't have to even get fresh water for this. Squeeze it out, and you can wipe off that chalk. There we go. It's like it was never there. I wiped off a little bit of my paint though because it was not completely dry. Like I said, I recommend it being completely dry first. But yeah, super easy to fix, right? So if there's a branch that you don't like, wet your paper towel, wipe right over it, and let it dry, and then do it again. And that's fine. You can do it as many times as you need to until you really are sure that you're happy with it. And I'm gonna bring my canvas up to the camera again so that you guys can see. This is what mine looks like. You do not have to copy me exactly, okay? I want to emphasize that. Your painting is your painting. It's not gonna look exactly like mine, and that's okay. That's actually a good thing. If everybody could just paint exactly like everyone else, that'd be super boring, right? Okay, so yeah. Gonna jump back in here. Okay, whoops. I always end up with a bunch of paint on my hands. It's inevitable, it's fine. Okay, so, oh, by the way, if anyone is concerned at home about like the chalk being there once we paint over these branches, it's fine. Once the branches are dry, we can do the same thing with the chalk. Just wipe a damp paper towel over the chalk marks that are left behind, and it'll be our little secret, okay? Nobody else needs to know that you used chalk to draw your branches. It's fine, okay? So anyway, our next step, and yes, we are ready for that next step. We are actually going to paint the tree itself black. So what we're gonna do, you can actually start with your 1-inch wash, which again is this guy. For me, it's kind of a slanted one. It's an angled brush. But you can use a square for this too. Start with it sideways, right? Vertical. Start like this, just kind of go down and just fill in. Fill that in. Now you want your edge to be fairly smooth. You don't want the chalk to make it so that your edge is too dry, because what happens if it's a dry edge, I'll see if I can do an example for you. Oh, I have one already. So if it's a dry edge, whoop, well, there it goes. So if it's a dry edge, it's gonna be like this. Do you see how it's kind of smudged in there? It's not like a smooth line like this. You can see it on this side too. This side is a smooth line because that was not too dry. That had enough paint mixture on the brush. So this though did not, and so it dried into the canvas and made it kind of like, you can see the canvas texture in there. So you don't want that. You actually really want your lines to be on the inside of the tree, like when you're coloring it in. That's whatever, it's fine. Okay, that's supposed to happen. But if you're doing an outer edge that you know is going to be the silhouette of the tree, you want those lines to be fairly smooth. So you want to make sure you have enough moisture on your brush. Make sure not to overdo it though. It is all about balance. Because if you have too much, you're gonna end up with a pretty gloopy tree, and you might not want it to be that gnarly. So, okay, so I'm gonna keep kind of saving myself a little bit of time by filling in the thick parts of these branches right here. And yes, I made my chalk lines go down underneath into the mountains, even though the silhouette is there. And that's because I do eventually want to add like a little bit of lighting onto the tree itself, just so we can see the silhouette. But yes, you do not have to if you feel like that sounds a little bit too complicated. Okay, so that's all I'm gonna do with my 1-inch wash. Now I'm gonna wanna switch brushes, okay? And I haven't used this one before, but because it's new, you'll often notice they stiffen these brushes when they're new, so you have to wet them first, okay? Before you use them, you have to wet them because then, ugh, my water's just nasty, but it's still good for the rest of the painting. But for a brush, here we go. So I wet it in the water and now I can bend those bristles. You wanna be able to move your bristles. So I'm gonna dip into the black now that I've got that done. And if you notice, to stabilize my hand, I get nervous as well. I've been painting for years, like half my life, and I still get nervous as well when I get to doing these fine details. So it's okay. What I do, because I know my background is dry and I don't have any paint on my pinky, I will use my pinky to actually stabilize and anchor my hand to the canvas so that I can then do those little fine lines. And again, they're branches, so it's okay if they're a little bit shaky or a little bit weird, you know, because it's nature. Nature's weird. I'm gonna be pretty quiet doing these though because I have to pretty much hold my breath when I do these. Because I tend to be very meticulous with my own work, not with other people's work, but with my own work. I think everyone can probably relate to that, right? Like, everyone's their own harshest critic. So a trick that I learned, if you end up with too much paint on your brush, you can just kind of twist it. Especially because, again, this is a round. This is a number 2 round. So you do want it to be in a round shape. You don't want it to end up a little too blocky. So we want it to have that point, because otherwise, what's the point? Anyway, we have fun. Anyway, there we go. And this part might take you a while. That's okay. Especially with this paint. It's so dry. Ah! And the chalk doesn't help because chalk is very dry. So it does tend to dry out your paint so that you don't get to go as far with each brush stroke before having to refill your paintbrush with more paint. So that's okay, that's not you, that's the chalk, more than likely. Or unless if you're painting under a fan, which I don't recommend because it's gonna dry out the paint too fast, you know, then that's just gonna happen. I also use the base of my hand as well to anchor myself on the canvas, and that's perfectly fine. And I'm going to show you guys, because artists are masters of hiding when they make mistakes, because we're so used to it that we don't have that grieving period that newcomers do. So we just immediately push through. So basically what I did, I'm gonna show you real quick, is I made this part of the branch a little bit too thick because it's even with the base. And I want the base to be thicker than this part. So I'm going to actually just, since there's no way to thin it out without, well, it's a lot of work, what I'm gonna do is just go along and thicken that part out. Instead, just gonna thicken the base out. There we go. And that's it. I do tend to like suck my lips for some reason when I'm really concentrating on painting or like I think anything. I don't know why. I've probably done that like all my life and never noticed really until recently. Oh gosh, my gosh, I can't believe I didn't tell you this in the beginning. I might actually edit this in earlier because this is really pivotal for this part. So when you want to make a thin line with your paint, you can use the same size brush to do a thick line or a thin line here, at least in this range of thickness and thinness. Okay, so since it's a round, it has a tip that we're using. The thing is, the way to get a thicker line with this brush is to press down a little bit harder. That's going to spread out the bristles and make your line longer, or thicker, not longer, thicker. So if you raise it up, I don't mind showing you on my hand, so it's a thick line and then a thin line. You see how that happened? So I lifted it up, kind of like in a flick. Do you remember in Harry Potter? A swish and flick. You didn't realize that we were actually taking levitation, or no, charms. We're taking charms class today. With Professor Flitwick. I still remember that. Oh my god. Full marks for Hufflepuff. 10 points to Hufflepuff. Yes, I am a Hufflepuff. Okay, and now I've got paint on my pinky, so I do make sure that if you're using your pinky to anchor your hand, that you do watch that. Okay. And you want the tips of your branches to be pointy, which means they're going to have that flick happen. You do need to have that little, bring your paintbrush completely off the canvas for that. And again, if you're feeling discouraged, it's okay. Instead of getting angry or feeling frustrated, just give yourself a little bit of time. Feel free to pause the video and just kind of breathe for a second. Remind yourself this is the first time you're doing this, if it is. I mean, if it's not, you're probably not going to be that frustrated. But if it's the first time that you're painting branches, it can be very frustrating. So just remember to give yourself grace, please, because I'm giving you all the grace. I think you're doing great. I don't even have to see it, but if you want to show me, absolutely feel free. I can give you guys ways that you can show me on social media how your painting turned out, and I would love to see them. So anyway, I think you're doing great. Keep it up. You'll notice I am literally holding my breath every time I do these brush strokes. I'm used to it. Like, it's just, I don't even really notice I'm doing it. until I do. And then I'm like, oh, look what I just did. So. Oops, that was a thick boy. Made that one really thick. That's okay. Just again, you want to thicken it up at the base a little bit. You want to take out that base. Got that base. One of the most time consuming. I think this is definitely the most time consuming part of this painting. It's just, if that's a relief to someone out there. It's a relief to me, so. Yes, and as you noticed, we decided not to do a moon. I don't know if you noticed, because I had it planned for, if I was going to do it behind the tree, but I just feel like this painting is taking a good amount of time by itself without a big old moon in the background. That might be a little too much, because we're already doing a lot for just this one lesson. So, go. And I just felt like that little branch was a little lonely. So since this branch over here like is stretching out so wide, I kind of want to bring it up, bring some of these other branches up just a little bit, because your tree, you kind of want it to be like a bouquet. If that makes sense, like a lot of times that's just how trees end up shaping themselves in very like rounded shapes. And you want them to be very full, like a bouquet, so. There we go. Okay, I feel pretty happy with these branches. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys my branches for this kind of final look here. There it is. They're kind of shining. So this acrylic is very shiny even as it's dry, if it's held up to the light, but yeah, there's my branches. You can see I tried my best to make them come to a point to really taper them out. So there we go. Boom. All right. So now more drying. I know. There is a little bit of shine that I want to do though. So I'm actually going to use that #2 round again. I'm going to wash it off really nice. And I'm going to get a little white on there and a tiny bit of black, but mostly white because it is still pretty wet. And I'm actually going to sit down for this because it's serious business time. And I'm going to just take that black a little ways up my tree, just on the outer edge, and couple little places in the middle. Fix that a little bit. Because I just want there to be a little bit more definition in here. So I'm going to do just some little lines. I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. It's harder to see. So like little lines on like close to the very outside of your edge there of your silhouette, and then a couple of little short lines in the middle, and that's going to give it kind of the look that there's some texture there. Okay? Yeah. And you can use your teensy tiny brush for this if you feel like that's going to be a little bit less stress, right? For me, I'm washing off my wash. I'm going to get rid of this guy with a little black because it's just a little bit too long for me. For my taste. I want it to be symmetrical because, you know, again, nature's not perfectly symmetrical, but I do like for things to be even. So there we go. All right. I'm going to add just a little bit more shine here. Again, we mixed up a little gray. So just a tiny bit of black, mostly white. And we're using our number 2 round. And we're just going to go along the outer edge here while our tree is drying. There we go. We don't want to do too much in the edges of the branches because that is where we're putting our flowers, and we really want those to be dry. So now is the time we need to check and see. They are actually pretty dry already, at least for me. So if they're dry enough for you as well, let's go ahead and jump on into the next, and I'm gonna make this, you know what? No, let's do the grass next. And then the final step will be our cherry blossoms themselves. So the next step that we're going to do, we're gonna wash off our number two round again, because there's a lot of open space down here. We're going to take our green and a little bit of black. We're going to mix it up, and here's what it looks like mixed up. Okay, and again I twist it so that it's got a nice little tip to it. And I'm going to start adding some grass. So the way that I do it, I wish, you know what, it's dark enough now. Like I said, we might actually just be able to do some green by itself. And lo and behold, I'm just doing some little pieces of grass down here. And then I might still do like a little pond or something, just the reflection of one. But yeah, this green is so transparent. Again, I don't like it very much, but this green is so transparent and the background is so black, you don't actually need to mix black into this specific green paint. But I think normally if you were using like the Blick, you might have to mix black in there. So I might show you guys in just a minute what this looks like, so that you can see, y'all can really see what I'm doing here. Okay, let me bring this up because I don't want you to just have to wait on me. Okay, so this is what I'm doing. I'm taking my brush at the base here. I know there's a lot of shine with this paint, but it's got a little green on it, just the green, And I'm just doing short little flicks to make grass. Okay, so that's going to be your grass. And you can do just like little collections of short little flicks like that. And this again can be very, very frustrating for some newbies, but it can also be very therapeutic and really relaxing. It just depends on your outlook and on this one. You know, don't expect perfection. Again, as always, that's going to be the first step to success, is just remembering that, you know, everybody starts out at something. At some point, everybody's new, or that doesn't make any sense. At some point, every master was new at their trade. At some point. I'm going to put some in front of the tree as well, kind of down here, to give it, again, a little bit more dimension. A little bit more dimension to mention. And then and let's see. Since the paint is so transparent, it starts out very dark, so I'm leaving that for my background grass, and then I'm just coming back in with an extra layer of green grass blades for the foreground grass, essentially, is what I'm doing here. So and you kind of want to fill up not all of the bottom space, because I do really want to do a little bit of a reflection of water down here. I think that would be really pretty. And I promise it will be fairly simple. So if you could do the shine in the trees, you can do the water, I promise. The grass is harder than the water. I know that sounds contradictory because, you know, water sounds like it's really difficult, but not this way, not the way I'm doing it. Not the way I do it. So let me go ahead and fill in a little bit more of that vibrant green grass down here at this side. Okay, and I think that's enough grass. Now I'm going to wash off my brush, and I'm going to take a little bit of white, a little bit of blue, and a little bit of black. And I'm going to make kind of this blue jeans color. It's the best I can describe it. So it's like a steel blue, I guess. Go ahead and mix all those together. I've got that nice steel blue, steel gray kind of color. That blue steel. I just turned left, so it's probably a Magnum, but anyway. I might actually just use this, the wash for that. Nope, not today. Okay. Okay. And you noticed I kind of just mixed it into the black that was already back there as well. So I'm going to use that as like, that's kind of the basis of our water right there, just like I turned it. I mostly used the wash, there's some carpet there. I mostly used the wash vertically, going from side to side, like we did when we were making our background. But then up here towards the edge of the water, I'm gonna go ahead and pull it close to y'all because it's going to be more detailed. I used, whoops, missed a spot there. I actually turned it on its side to make a little bit more of a flattened shape up there towards the grass. So yeah, go. Whoop. Okay, and now I am going to use the number 2 round. I'm gonna wash it off and dry it off, and while this is still wet, that's totally fine, I am going to bring in a little bit of, just a couple of lines kind of going along in the same direction as the water, as the edge of the water. So I'm just using white to do this. And again, it's going to mix into the color. We want it to actually be wet down here, that's fine. There we go. And now we have a little tiny ponds down there in the base. And so now our tree branches are basically dry. They should be by now, for goodness sakes. So we're going to take our napkin, dampen it, and we're going to go ahead and get rid of those chalk lines. We're banishing them. We're banishing the chalk. It's trying to reveal our secrets, and we don't want that. So it is banished. I actually pinch my napkin while it's damp, and I just kind of use it very much like it's a brush, in a sense, because that way I can just get at the chalk and I'm not going over anything that might still be wet. Just in case, just to be extra cautious. Because it does pay to be a little extra cautious with these. If you do make a mistake and you go over something that's wet, that's okay. Just try to go over just the smudge and wipe it off, because oftentimes, and if you make a mistake during acrylic painting in general, usually water can just get rid of it. Honestly, it is water soluble at first until it dries. Once it's dry, that's it. It's on there forever. You just have to paint over it. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now, wait, there's a little tiny bit more. See, it's trying to reveal our secrets. Not today. Not today, chalk. Okay, so now, here's the result without all that chalk. What we have so far, and there's our water down there with our grass, okay? All right. Perfect. Okay, so make sure that no more chalk. I know it's a terrible idea to touch your face, lick your fingers, anything like that, but by goodness, I'm still not used to it, so it's a bad habit. Okay, so the final thing, also, if you want to keep your brushes nice, leave them in the water, with the bristles in the water until you're finished with them. You know, if you're done with them for the moment, for a step, leave them in the water. You know, whenever you're not using them, leave them in the water, because that will keep the acrylic from drying in the bristles and ruining the brush. It's okay that I told you now and I didn't tell you at the beginning, because they should still be fine. But if you leave them out and about and not in your water cup, they will dry and then the bristles will be useless. It is nearly impossible to get acrylic out of your bristles without ruining the glue that holds the brush together. So anyway, finally, we're at the point where we can do our cherry blossom tree. So the actual blossoms. I, myself, have very little room left for me to make my pink. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna scoop a little bit of my red over here onto my, where I mixed my concoction. I'm gonna mix white and red together. Whew, that's a red. Oh my gosh, that magenta is really something. And it's okay if it's not perfectly mixed together. I actually might want to use this guy instead, personally. If you guys have, okay, yeah, I think that's gonna make for, yes, tentatively yes. I'm gonna check, I'm gonna actually test them. So you can kind of test and see what kind of branches you're gonna come up with before, yeah, this is gonna make better branches, I think. So I'm glad I have this brush. So basically I'm gonna just start stabbing the paint here, haphazard-like, globs of it. Maybe even dab it a little bit first, and then I'm just gonna start stabbing it on there. So I don't know if you can see that. I actually want to use a little bit more of my magenta because I want some dark magenta petals in there as well. But just when you're stippling here, add those flowers just to the edge, just to the tips, wherever you want the branch tips to be. We can pretend there's some coming out here as well. That's perfectly fine. You kind of want to do that because you want it to look pretty full. And pretty full. Anyway, I got jokes. Okay. I do want some more magenta. So, I do know some Spanish. I don't know if I'm saying that at all right, even in an exaggerated way. But yeah, we're gonna look for this kind of thing. So I am gonna bring this up to y'all so you can see a little bit better. So I'm stabbing it. Get some more paint on there. And show you guys up close. So I'm stabbing it. And you want it to be more painted on the inside because those are, we're basically making clusters of petals. And so there's gonna be more on the inside of the cluster than on the edge. So I'm gonna add some more magenta just to this plate because I know I'm gonna keep needing it. Yep. Because I do really like that. So my camera stopped recording. I'm so sorry about that. I'm gonna have to wrap this up pretty quickly. So I'm gonna try and continue painting the last bit of this painting fairly quickly because I think I only have like 20 minutes of footage left. So it's fine, it's fine. It's fine. So I'm gonna go ahead and add my clusters of petals. And what I'm doing to mix it, I'm stabbing it on the plate too, because I don't care. I don't even care anymore. And it's not because I'm in a hurry, that really is just like a really easy way to mix it, especially if it gets as dry as it's getting, as easily as it's getting dried. We are almost done! I'm so excited. I'm so proud of you guys. We're almost done. I'm sorry if I'm in the way. I'm trying not to be. Okay, and I'm kind of alternating too. Sometimes I'm just dipping like pretty much straight into the magenta itself. Try your best not to stab your canvas if you can, like actually through the canvas. I promise they're really durable most of the time. Like unless there's something wrong with it, it should be able to hold up to this, what we're doing here. But make sure you cover all the tips of your branches as best as you can. I know we worked really hard on making them nice and pointy and pretty. You can even add some where there aren't any tips, because again, we're just going to pretend that there's branches sticking out directly at us, like at the camera, if you will. And that's going to make our tree look more even. So yeah, and again, we're looking for kind of a bouquet shape. It's almost like a half circle is what you're looking for these. So, even this out just a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to take just the white and I'm going to stab the palette a little bit, and I'm going to just bring in this white. Just a little tiny bit of this white, just to give it a little tiny bit on the tops of these clusters of leaves, or of petals, I should say. And I didn't wash my brush, so it's kind of coming into a light pink. And that's really what we want. Is like we don't want it to be like stark white unless we're doing white cherry blossoms, which are a thing. And they are beautiful. And you can do them, but that's not what we're doing right now. So it just might look a bit different. So we're just looking to put these on the tops of our petal clusters for right now. Adding some dimension to those clusters of petals. We really do want that, you know. Okay, I want to even it out a little bit more, so I'm taking a little bit more pink. Let's bring over here. This one's out a little tiny bit more than I'd like. So I'm bringing some more of the dark pink, and then I'm going to add a little tiny bit more white here to the top of that. Into that. There we go. Ah, there it is. That's what we wanted right there. All right. Okay, I think we're done. So, I tend to get a little bit perfectionistic towards the very end, so I'm sorry, you guys. I'm gonna add just a little bit more here. To that guy. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and call it a day. There's our painting. Yay! I really like it. I hope you guys liked it too. I really enjoyed painting with you guys. If there's anything that you want to fix, feel free to fix it, keep working on it, you know, come back to it, you know, take a deep breath, come back to it again, you know. I'm probably going to be working on this a little bit longer because I know myself and I know that's what I'm going to be doing, especially with this guy. It's just a little too symmetrical down there, but but that's what I'm going to do. I'm adding a little bit more down here so that it doesn't look quite so much like that branch is mimicking that guy up there. There we go. That was just so distracting for me. Oh my gosh. Oops. I used a little too much water there. Okay, yes! Now I feel much happier about it as a final result. See, it's a lot more full on that side. I feel like it just looks a lot less like it was too symmetrical before. So now we are officially done, and I am so happy that you guys decided to paint with me today. I really hope that we can do this again. If enough people really enjoyed this art lesson, this little paint party, if you will, then I will do another video. So please let me know what you guys think, and what you guys thought of this art lesson, and I'm gonna go ahead and start on editing this video tonight so that I can get it up as soon as possible and you guys can start painting with me. Please feel free, and seriously, I would love to see you guys share your paintings with me on social media. I'm gonna go ahead and leave links to my social media in the description box, and also I'll try to remember to leave them on the end screen for you guys to find me. So thank you guys so much again for watching, for painting with me. I really love you guys. I really hope that you are all staying safe and healthy and happy as well. Thank you guys so much. See you next time. Bye.